And they got contracts with the big dogs. You feel me? Whenever you turn on your computer, on your phone, these operating systems is what you will use to access whatever you need to access on your devices. So I know y'all got the money. Basically, they ghosted. It was ghost town. They came back and they said, hey, we just wanted some clarification on your email. I was very clear. They were like, is this per month? Is this per year? I reiterated. And then it was a ghost town. And I was like, so $20,000 annually is too much to ask? Welcome to BLAXIT to Africa. I'm Tadre Delora Mournier, a California native living my best life in Nairobi, Kenya. Thank you so much for coming along for the ride. I hope that you are informed, entertained, and inspired to BLAXIT to Africa. Big tech exploitation in Africa. I mean, y'all, let's just be real. Let's just call a spade a spade. Corporations exploiting humans. Like, what else is new? So there's a 60-minute story that I saw on YouTube entitled Training AI Takes Heavy Toll on Kenyans Working for $2 an Hour, AI Sweatshops. I'm going to link that for you. Livid when I saw that. One, because I was a huge proponent of technology firms coming to Africa. They were already here when I came, but specifically call centers. Two, I have my own story about exploitation with big tech in Africa, and I wanted to share it with you. The title alone is just wild. First of all, let's talk about this $2 an hour. I'm always like surprised. Why am I surprised? But I'm always just like baffled by these Americans that will vote for a political candidate that says we're going to bring the jobs back. We're going to make America great again. Realizing that America was only great for a small subset of the population. You had to be white, you had to be male, you had to be able-bodied, you had to be cisgendered, you had to be heterosexual. All of those things really needed to apply for America to be a great place for you. Then this notion that these politicians is going to bring jobs back. Jobs have been disappearing from America since I was a child, since the 70s. Somebody can pay a Kenyan $2, or they could pay you $20. You think the jobs is going to magically come back? And yet and still, people fall for it every time. Lower taxes and jobs coming back to the good old US of A. And every time they get disappointed, and every election they vote the same again. Now, they interviewed an activist who was basically saying, there was something she said that really struck with me, and it's a question that I have been asking myself since I've been in East Africa, which is, if you wouldn't do it at home, why would you do it here? Let's look at the minimum wage in the US. The federal minimum wage is $7.25. Theoretically, my understanding is that the states cannot go below the federally mandated minimum wage. Where I used to live in DC for 13 years, the minimum wage is $17.50. California is $16. Okay, so how this works in the US is that you have a federal minimum wage, you have a state, and you can also have a city-wide minimum wage, which I'll get to. The average minimum wage across the country is $11.80. So if I can take my business on Fiverr, outsource on Fiverr, outsource to Venezuela, Colombia, Kenya, India, the Philippines, because I know that I am legally obligated to pay a minimum wage, what do you think I'm going to choose? In Georgia, I don't know how Georgia gets away with this. $5.15 an hour for workers who are not covered by the Fair Labor Standards Act. That's lower than the federal minimum wage. So the 60-minute story showed that Meta had contracted $12.50 to be paid to these workers who were doing AI work, grunt work, okay, grunt work within the AI technology field. However, the subcontractor based in Kenya decided to take 84% of those profits and give the workers $2. Okay, so then I said to myself, all right, well, I've worked for staffing agencies. What's the standard in the US? So according to ChatGPT, staffing agencies typically apply a markup to the employee's pay rate to cover operational costs and generate a profit. For temporary or contract positions, this markup generally ranges from 20 to 75%. 75% sounds very, very high. It depends on factors like job complexity and industry demands. So this information is from Advanced Partners. And for permanent placements, agencies often charge a fee between 10 and 20% of the employee's annual salary. That seems to track based on my experience. So let me just talk about how I got into tech, because Lord knows that's not what I went to school for. No, I took one computer science course as a substitute for math, and I damn near flunked out. I got a C for effort, okay? Listen. So basically, I got into the tech field because I had decided to launch a personal styling business, styling for love. Now, when I look back on it, I'm like, Tadre, that was some BS. But back then, you could not have convinced me otherwise that I was not finna just drop a bomb on the people and just really like elevate people's dating lives and love experiences by styling people from the inside out. I had done the market research. I had all of the marketing collateral. I was out there in the field, it was hustling. And at the end of the day, TT was not making a profit. So ultimately that led me to working in tech, low level at tech. For me, I wanted a job that required very little mental capacity. I could go in, I could get my check, I could come home, regular paycheck, come home and still have mental capacity to work on my passion project business on the weekends and after hours. So I started working in a call center. I worked for two organizations, two startup tech organizations, and ultimately ended my career with a startup tech organization based in Santa Monica, California, as an online stylist. So for those of you who don't know, in the US, we have clothing subscriptions where every month you'll get a new box of clothing based on your taste, your lifestyle, your preferences. And there's AI that helps to get your collection together, but ultimately it's a human being, an online stylist like myself, who's going to chat with you, talk with you, follow up with you, make edits to your collection just to ensure that you're happy with the experience with the products. We also have clothing rental companies. Whereas in my particular case, the company that I worked for, they provided the highest end suits and tuxedos and accoutrements for men. Americans, we are very casual in our dress, so we found that men did not understand how a suit should fit on their bodies, how much cuff should be shown, which cuff length, which neckwear, etc., which suit cut, double-breasted, etc., that would work best for their bodies. So when they had to go to a formal event, they didn't know how to dress. That's where I would come in, and I would have very personal conversations with these guys. So that's how I got into that field. Now, I knew that there were two women in our department that were heading to the Philippines periodically and staying for months at a time. I knew they were training our Filipino teammates. That's how it was presented to us. They said, oh, we're going to the Philippines. We're training your Filipino teammates. You won't be replaced. there's nothing to worry about because they'll be working while we're sleeping. Sounded like a good idea to me, because when I would come in at 6 in the morning, I wouldn't have a stack of tickets to tend to. Our Filipino teammates was working away overnight. They're on a different time zone. For those of you who've watched the episode Black Jobs in Africa, you know how this ended. So it wasn't long before the CEOs, executive directors came to my department to tell us that there would be some layoffs. And they told us that, those of us who had high KPIs wouldn't have anything to worry about. I was always in the top 3. There was a screen in front of us to let us know that we were meeting our KPIs at all times, actually in the front and off to the side. And of course, I was always meeting my KPIs. I was underemployed. I was overqualified for that role. And I had also come up with a program that the co-CEO had told me was impressive, and he estimated that it would double our revenue. So I knew I was safe. I wasn't safe. From someone who has worked in a call center, who has worked in customer care in various capacities, to the Americans, what I want to explain to you is the reason why customer care has declined over the years really doesn't have anything to do with the customer care agent and more to do with the KPIs that are enforced on that customer care agent in a developing country. From what I understand from the KPIs that our Filipino counterparts had to meet, they have to close tickets faster. They have to be online with you in a lesser period of time. They don't have as much agency to really handle your problems, to solve your problems outside of the box. So that means that when you email them, they may close your ticket within 30 minutes after responding, because for them to not meet their KPIs affects their salaries. When you talk to or chat with or email an American customer care agent, they can think outside the box. They can offer you a solution as long as it works. It doesn't have to be a part of the script. They can walk over to somebody in another department and get an answer right away. They can text somebody in Slack and get an answer within seconds. For the customer care agents in the developing world, they don't have that. And for someone who's worked chat, who's worked calls, who's worked emails, I know what's happening behind the scenes, and I really feel for our counterparts on the other side of the world. For those of y'all who work in tech in the developing world for American companies, I want to break this down for y'all. What life is like for tech workers in the US. There's lots of benefits that do not translate over to the developing world, even though it's the same company. And I think that's a shame. All you have to do, if you really want to know what life is like for tech workers, particularly tech workers who are in headquarters, in offices, and not in the warehouse, okay? You just go to their recruitment or jobs tab and watch the recruitment video and listen to the benefits that are being offered. Working in tech, for me, really suited my lifestyle. It suited my personality. We have open kitchens. You can go in the kitchen at any point in time and fix yourself a sandwich, a smoothie, all types of beverages and snacks. Once a week, we had catered lunches in which talent management would hire a different food truck to come and cater food to us. So we got to explore food from the best food trucks in the city. At one point, we even had like a Starbucks card. So you could just at any point take that card, walk to Starbucks, and get yourself a Frappuccino or whatever it was on the company's dime. In addition, we had sleep pods, we had a gym, we had yoga, meditation, sound bath, all hands on deck meetings in which you got to hear from people throughout various departments in terms of the direction that the company was headed in. And that would give you inspiration, but also let you know that you were part of a bigger picture and really not just a cog in the wheel. I mean, and then of course, there's the healthcare benefits, there's the stock options, there's so much. And when these companies decide to come to the developing world, they don't transfer those benefits. And in many cases, these people, our counterparts across the pond, if you will, are doing more work. They're doing the heavy lifting. One of the things that I liked about working in tech was that from the outside looking in, at least initially when I started, it seemed like a meritocracy. You have to perform. If you don't perform, that's your job. I saw the co-CEO fire his younger brother because he was not meeting those KPIs. We liked him. He was attractive. He was a sweet guy. But at the end of the day, he wasn't performing. And that to me told me, okay, Tadre, you're in the right place. As long as you perform, and you've always been a high performer, you're going to do well. The other thing that I liked about working in a startup is that it seems like real free-spirited and boho. You could come to work in your pajamas if you wanted to. And you could work on the floor, in a hammock, in a nook. Like, it was just, as long as you performed. They didn't care how you looked when you came to work or where you worked in the office, unless, of course, you were in my department. Like, you pretty much needed to be at your desks. Well, you didn't need to, but they wanted you to be at your desk. Okay, because we had Bluetooth headsets, I was like, why are we being treated differently from everybody else? But that's another story. For those of you who don't know how corporate America works in terms of demographics, who's where, let me just break this down for you, because I want you to know that it's not just you that's being mistreated. It's not just you that's being discriminated against. What I have noticed is that you have white men, able-bodied, cisgendered, usually in the C-suite. There are exceptions. Generally speaking, okay, there's white men in the C-suite. There may be an Asian man, an Indian man, that's the CTO, but it's usually white men in the C-suite. You've got blacks and a handful of Latinos, call center, and you've got primarily Latinos in the warehouse, okay? And then everybody else is in between. Oftentimes you'll find black women in HR, okay? Everybody else is like mid-management. You'll usually find a few blacks in mid-management. And they'll often stay stuck there in mid-management until they retire. That's typically how corporate America looks, all right? Now, they love to put their token people of color on display. Oh my gosh. The first tech company that I worked for, they sold me on this kumbaya and this utopian environment, and we're radical in our approach, healthy and whole foods for everyone. My face was all up and through that office. They probably removed it. They probably removed those pictures because I went on salary.com and left them a very honest review, which led me going tit for tat with the HR director, who was like, those things may have happened before I got here, but I'm here now and those things no longer happen. But it was happening when I was there. And I said what I said, and that's how that ended. And I really don't want to mention their name because I really just want to be done with them, but they know how I feel. You can go on salary.com and search for my name and probably see that review. However, this company is really part of my story because ultimately it's the universe's way of kicking me out of the nest and just saying fly, fly. Because that moment was a means to an end, and I wasn't really supposed to be there. So, as I was saying, they love displaying their token people of color. I was constantly being asked to market products, constantly being photographed, videoed, and yet on seven different occasions, I was never promoted. Mind you, I'm up in there on the phones with a whole law degree, with all of this entrepreneurial spirit behind me. And even when my direct supervisors would call me into the office and recommend me for a position, I wouldn't get these little positions that I was overqualified for. When my colleagues would come to me and say, Tadra, you would be great for this position. Oh, I heard them talking about you. They loved you. And even, I remember even doing an interview for a promotion in the cafeteria in front of people. Like, they couldn't even reserve a conference room for me, a nook for me. I had to put on my best show in front of people that I may not have even wanted to know that I was applying for the job. And people overheard the interview and came to me and was like, I don't really know what you interviewed for, but you sounded good and I heard them talking about you, and good luck. You know, just was not meant to be there, because I didn't go no further than where I started. What I want folks to know about the tech industry, particularly as it relates to call centers in the US, is the call center is one step up from the warehouse, okay? And the warehouse is one step up from the field. I was very disappointed in the tech company that I worked for, when I discovered that we was opening up all of these locations. And yet the people in the warehouse, which were mostly Latino, did not have adequate ventilation. We didn't even have a proper HVAC system for them. That's crazy. How are we opening up other warehouses throughout the country when we don't even have this one right? And then, like, the racial breakdown, the social breakdown just really started to rear its ugly head. We started to have 3 different Christmas parties. There was a Christmas party for headquarters. And then we had some people that was very uncomfortable working around so many Black people, so many Latinos, so many lower class whites that were in the call center. So they went and moved the call center out of headquarters to the cheapest real estate, the cheapest corporate real estate available, which was by the airport. So much so that when I would go for my breaks and go for walks, I had to wear my badge, because it was in an area that was frequented by sex workers. And these men cruising for sex workers might confuse me, for one, if I didn't have my badge on. So we had a separate Christmas party for the call center, which I don't think anybody went to. I know I didn't go, because we were so demoralized after having been kicked out of the headquarters. And then they had a Christmas party for the warehouse, because God forbid should we intermingle. Heaven forbid that we should take advantage of the good food, the good wine that was being spared on people that worked in HQ. And the thing about the displaying of the token Blacks is that we had celebrity investors, Black celebrity investors, John Sally, Will Smith, Layla Ali, and they would always bring them up when we were in headquarters. They would always bring them over to our department to show, like, hey, you know, we have diversity hires. I remember when Layla Ali saw me walking up the stairs, she was like, oh, okay, so y'all hired like real Black people. Hey sis, how you doing? And I wanted to tell her, like, because this was the moment when the veil was starting to be lifted. Layla Ali came to that company because she wanted to use that company as a vehicle to spread healthy living to the Black community. It was important for her that Black people were represented in that company. Little did she know, we were really only represented within that one department. There was one exception at the time, and she just so happened to be Kenyan, by the way, who worked in the buying department. And she even was having issues, having come from Target. To come from Target as a buyer to this small little tech startup and being thwarted at every step, she and I had conversations about it. And she just wasn't able to realize that, I'm being thwarted because I'm Black. And I didn't want to break the news to her. I really wanted her to piece the clues together. So part of the reason why I was really livid off of this 60-minute story is because I advocated for call centers to be in Africa. Reason being is to the American ear, the Kenyan and Ugandan accent specifically when speaking English sounds British. Now that I know how some Kenyans feel about Ugandans, y'all don't come for me. I'm saying to the American ear, when certain East Africans speak English, it sounds like a British accent. Y'all do learn the British English, and you guys enunciate in ways that we don't enunciate. Did you hear that T at the end of enunciate? East Africans will say that T. It will not be silent. It will not be soft. That T will be a hard T. So I was like, okay, I have this background and we're outsourcing this work to India, where the average American who doesn't have a passport cannot understand the words that are coming out of the people's mouths in India, generally speaking. They have a difficult time understanding Filipino English accents, although Filipino is a lot more palatable for the American ear. And also Colombia is a little bit more palatable, the Venezuelans, the Mexicans, but that Indian accent for the American that don't have a passport, that ain't traveled outside the country, that's a tough one for us. So I thought, wow, this money could really transform the lives of Africans in Africa. If they're going to pay us $25 an hour and at least give Africans half of that, that could go a long way. Even $10 an hour in a 40-hour work week over a year, that's 20,000 USD for just answering phones, doing call center work, collections work. That could really transform somebody's life, particularly somebody who is educated and unemployed. So I was in talks with a Ugandan entrepreneur to bring call centers to Uganda. And he wanted me to work hand in hand with him. And at this stage in my life, I'm semi-retired. I'm like, I don't want to do that type of work. I can be the visionary. I can come in for trainings periodically if you want to. I can do consultancy work, but the leg work, the grunt work, I am not able to donate my time to do that, but I can advise you. To go back to the psychology of this British accent, people tend to forget that Americans were colonized by British. So when we hear a British accent, psychologically, it signifies expert. Think of the Geico lizard. Geico is an insurance company in the US, and they have this little lizard caricature that is like the mascot. He has a British accent. So when we hear the British accent, we think authority, we think expert. So hiring East Africans and maybe even some Southern Africans like Zimbabwe, Botswana, to work in call centers for American companies is really not a stretch. Fast forward, I'm now in Kenya, and somebody sends me an advertisement for call center work. And I was trying to find the original flyer. I could not find a flyer. I think they were paying like $12.50 an hour. So y'all know I'm 51, I'm semi-retired. I do have my projects with my American clients. So for me to step back out there in the employment market and really offer my expertise, I'm more so thinking about the next generation. How can I help the next generation get a leg up for their next opportunity, for their own business? So I go to this tech company that is headquartered in Tanzania, has an office literally down the street from me, and I present myself as somebody who can actually train your call center workers. I get there, it's like a cattle call, okay? from the top of this building, and it's a high-rise building, wrapped through the corridors, okay, all the way outside and around the block is young people. They look like they're college age or like recent college graduates with their CVs in hand, dressed well, ready to present themselves well, briefcases in hand. I was like, okay, I'm proud. I see y'all. I see y'all. And for people who are looking to launch a business here, even if it's just a small LLC or sole proprietorship, and you might need, some freelancers or some young people who have fire, who have skill, Kenya's a great place for you to choose from a pool of educated applicants. One of the things that came out in the 60-minute story is that every year, 1 million college graduates emerge from universities in Kenya. The government is charged with creating 1 million new jobs annually for these new graduates. And it's not happening. Hence the protests that were happening in June. The protests were about taxes and not knowing where the taxes were going, but they were also being fueled by this anger of, we did what we were told to do, and there's nothing here for us. And now you want to saddle us with this debt that our children and grandchildren will be paying for? It was intense. Okay. So I get in front of the right people. They're interested in meeting with me. I see the call center. I see that the people that are already working in the call center, they really look like sophomores, juniors, maybe even freshmen in college. We know Black don't really crack, so I can only guesstimate that the oldest they might have been would be like 25. So here we are. For this type of work, you're basically exploiting a population that is educated and unemployed. I get in front of the guys who are running the whole Kenyan operation. They are Indian from India. They are not Kenyan of Indian descent. So I present to them that I want to do this consultancy work. I would like to train your customer care workers. The advertisement said that they were looking for neutral English speakers. I do not have a neutral English accent or neutral American accents. If you're looking for that in the States, you'll usually find that in like the Western states. So Oregon, Washington, Arizona, California, maybe even Maine. No, Maine, they don't. They have a very interesting accent. I probably would have a neutral accent coming from California. It just so happens that my grandparents are from the South, all of them. So I have a little bit of a twang. However, to the non-American, maybe I do have a neutral accent. So they wanted me for language training, and they wanted me there full time. They did not want me to work there as a consultant, which I didn't really understand, because having me work as a consultant would be more fiscally advantageous for them than to have me there, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, or whatever it was. So I put together an offer, all right, 20,000 USD annually for a retainer. Y'all call me in when you need me. Okay, included in this annual retainer would be curriculum development, training point persons, right? Because first of all, it makes more sense for me to train your trainers so that you don't have to have me to keep coming in as an added expense. But if you have certain leads for your department and they have the knowledge that I have, that makes more sense for you. So I would train point persons, I would do shadowing, I would do evaluations, initial assessments, and quarterly trainings and evaluations. 20,000 USD. This is the number that I came up with because I was like, I don't know how to charge in Africa. And this is my Kenyan price, essentially. And they got contracts with the big dogs. You feel me? Whenever you turn on your computer, on your phone, these operating systems is what you will use to access whatever you need to access on your devices. So I know y'all got the money. Then I gave them the option. If they didn't want to do a $20,000 retainer for the year, you just bring me in per quarter or per cohort, okay? In which I will be doing the same thing. That to me made sense from a business perspective for them versus bringing me on as a full-time employee where you're going to have to pay me some benefits and probably feed me. But I think a lot of these companies, their way of having control over you is by having you as a full-time employee instead of you coming in as a consultant pretty much on your own schedule, but still offering high quality services. So basically they ghosted. It was ghost town. They came back and they said, hey, we just wanted some clarification on your email. I was very clear. They were like, is this per month? Is this per year? I reiterated, and then it was a ghost town. And I was like, so $20,000 annually is too much to ask? $5,000 per quarter is too much to ask? Well, there was nowhere else I could go. And to be perfectly honest, I was willing to come on as a full-time employee. And I let them know that because I evaluated my financial goals. And I was like, Tadra, you want that house by the beach. This will help you get there. Put aside more money, put down cash on that beachside house. And I was willing to give them 6 months to a year of me full time. I was asking too much, apparently. Now, this particular company, I don't want to name them because I don't really know how they're treating their employees. I just know what I experienced. The work that they wanted me to help them with was, yes, it was language training, but specifically with collections. These call center agents were doing collection work. And they have offices in Southern Africa, in Kenya, in India, where else? And also West Africa. The 60-minute story cited 20-year-old labor laws. They cited lack of protection from the Kenyan government. That's a must. It's a must. If you don't have government protections, if you have these antiquated labor laws or amazing labor laws that are not enforced, people will come here and think they can treat your people however, and they will. Corporate greed knows no end. I'm really proud of Africans for knowing their worth and pushing back. There's now a class action suit against Meta, against this staffing agency that I believe has since left Kenya. Generally speaking, people associate Africa with poverty. In my own fashion tour business, to get people to put these two words together, Africa and luxury, is a hard one to fathom. The way people come to Kenya and are shocked at the prices of dining out, of shopping luxury brands, shopping a luxury boutique, they're very shocked. Whether they come from West Africa, whether they come from Eurasia, North America, Europe, they're very shocked. So people think they could come here and get things dirt cheap. So I want to leave you with this. For every single pain point that I mention in any episode is a business opportunity. You hear what I'm saying? It's a business opportunity. For those of you who have access to capital, who work in tech, this is an opportunity for you to actually launch a tech staffing agency, launch a call center in Africa, and actually pay people a livable wage. I hope that you're listening, and I hope that you can see that these are not complaints, but pain points and opportunities for solutions. Thank you for joining me on this episode of BLAXIT to Africa. If you like what you heard, please share, subscribe, and leave a comment. May you thrive. May you be inspired. May you move with love and intention. Until next time.